Life is really ongoing and seemingly unending. And sometimes this ceaseless change really feels like it's water. You're just drowning all the time. And just as you get through a dangerous stretch of currents and then you steady yourself and boom, you have another perilous stress. We really want to look and see how we call this a change fatigue. It's because ongoing change really leads us to a downward spiral in our attitudes toward people of power and toward change. It leads to a decreased motivation and morale, and we have a lack of trust and skepticism, and at the very worst, we become very cynical. And we need to be aware of type, and the awareness of this MBTI type really helps us to avoid this downward spiral of cynicism. So as we look at this, we want to realize that the most significant relationship between this spiral toward cynicism really deals with a preference for thinking and feeling. And thinking and feeling deal with the decision-making process within those MBTI types. And when decisions need to be made and judgments are formed, they have natural tendencies. So people who prefer thinking tend to be skeptical and to question and critique, while those who feel feeling are really more trusting. They want to accept and defend. But as these changes continue to occur and new changes come along, because that's the way life is, changes just keep on coming, we really are frustrated. And especially if we don't have the first changes really fully integrated. Now there's a danger for the organization, the family, or the people in it to really develop cynicism. And this is where we look at the need for a positive force for identifying these problems, raising the important issues, and ultimately really improving some change plans, doing some change management, because cynicism is corrosive and it's going to really bring a distrust of leaders, colleagues, supervisors, even themselves. A person as a contributor, they're going to distrust anybody that's in authority or related to that change. And the only way to really interrupt that downward spiral is really to lead people away from the cynicism and act decisively to combat any kind of mistakes that are bringing people toward this deal of cynicism. Moving forward, the natural skepticism for people who like the thinking side or prefer thinking, it's going to turn to cynicism if people realize or if their opinions and critiques are really dismissed. They want the organization to seem more logical. However, sometimes their decisions seem illogical. And if they don't trust the competence or the knowledge of the people who are in power or the leaders. For the feeling, this natural desire that they have of people to trust, they are very trusting. Remember, they like harmony. And it's going to turn to cynicism if the values and the relationships that prevailed are really being betrayed, especially as you see an organization or a family or a group try to modify relationships and modify values. Then this can really lead to cynicism. We need to realize that we want to make sure that we do not overpower people, that we run over the top of them, and they need to believe that the organization, that the leaders and those in power really care about people. As we move forward, we want to see how each one of these really handle stress. And this comes through our dominant functions. So when you have a dominant sensing function, which is the ISTJ and the ISFJ, these particular people are going to be more of an introverted attitude, and they're going to respect and rely on that internally stored data, that data that's more realistic and complete to them, especially when it's about events and people that are important to them. And they want to be able to access that information as it is needed. Now, when we look at the dominant intuition for the INFJ and the INTJ, they're going to want to develop and rely on their inner insights. They need clear and complex insights, and that's regarding their present and the future and how they relate. They're going to maintain a clear sense of direction. The ISTP and the INTP are both part of the dominant thinking, and these are part of that introverted attitude, which means they're I's, right? They're introverted, and they want to logically organize their data. They need to have a logical organization for ideas and concepts, and they're going to put them into some kind of systematic structure, and all of this is because they're searching for a truth. They believe that there is an optimal truth, a perfect truth, and that's what they need. Now, the dominant function for feeling is part of the ISFP and the INFP, and they want to really be able to assess everything through their value system. They have a very strong inner value system, and they want to be able to honor and support others. That's part of that feeling. Remember that feeling function, that harmony. They need to look for what may be morally right. As we look at the extroverted attitude, these people are going to deal with stress in a more extroverted way. And now looking at the dominant sensing for the ESTP and the ESFP, they really love action and experience, and they're going to be more stimulated by interacting with the world and with people, and they want to be able to focus on the present. They're very present oriented, and that goes along with that P, the perceiving side. And they're going to enjoy using their creativity and to respond in that moment. Again, part of that perceiving side. Now, the dominant function of the intuition wants to look at the environment for new ideas, and they want to be able to pursue them enthusiastically. They're always searching for something that's very creative and interesting. The ESTJ and the ENTJ have a dominant extroverted thinking function. Now, these are very fun people because they are very logical. They tend to really want to look at the goals and to see how they relate exactly to the group and to the organization or to the family or to whomever. They want to be able to see how those goals relate to the change that's required. So they're going to be very decisive, very logical, and very efficient. Now, when we look at that, we can contrast it with the dominant function feeling for the extroverted, which is the ESFJ and the ENFJ. They want to meet the values. They're more interested in the values part and how they can use that external environment to meet the needs of the relationships and the people that are within that. As we look at type exaggeration, we want to see that this happens in stressful situations. This is when people can no longer use their energy and their best side of themselves, and that they lose control. And we call this type exaggeration because now we're living in an exaggerated state. So when stress continues to build, as it does many times, the dominant function becomes very, very exaggerated and rigid. And it puts more and more energy into a part that is counterproductive. And that leads to that exaggeration. So with current stress levels, or with stress levels that keep building up, many people in type exaggeration, they can live in that for a great amount of time. And this not only affects other people negatively, it also gets in the way of someone functioning at their best. We need to look at how we can develop skills and maturity to enable people to really use their mental processes appropriately within an environment and to be supportive. We need to be able to help them in that exaggerated state and to be able to modify and change. We want to access information that's distorted, look at their judgment that's not balanced, and be able to really help them realize that they are compromised and how we can help them more. So when we look at this dominant introverted sensing, this is an ISTJ and an ISFJ. At their best, they're very selective and they want to choose the right facts. They're going to be possess an excellent recall for specific things and specific data, facts, and opinions. They love to reflect. Remember, that's part of that introverted style. But they will reflect in a timely way because they want to meet their deadlines, and meeting their deadlines is part of that judging. So they need time to reflect, but they will do it on a time scale. And they're going to be able to communicate very effectively, even appropriately. On their exaggerated state, though, they're more worried about one fact. They fixate on something. They become obsessed about a minute, unimportant detail. Very dogmatic almost, and they're unable to make decisions. They're indecisive and unable to take any kind of action, and therefore they become withdrawn and they shut down. Many times you're going to see that they will obsess by watching too much TV, reading too much, doing something that allows them to be by themselves and away from the change and just completely ignore it. When we look at the dominant extroverted sensing of the ESTP and the ESFP, these are wonderful personalities that at their best, they're able to really see and reflect, and then they will be able to go forward and do what needs to be done. They're active, talkative, they're social, and they are very straightforward and clear. They're also very detail oriented. This type does a wonderful job at being able to share what they're thinking and how they're processing information. But when they are in that exaggerated state, that is, of course, come to us because they're overwhelmed with stress, they will act and speak without thinking and become very hyperactive. They tend to chatter a lot. They disturb each other. They disturb other people. They're blunt. They're curt. And they even get to the point that they are so detail oriented that they become obsessed, that every single detail becomes extremely crucial to every kind of movement, change, or judgment. The dominant introverted intuition is an INFJ and the INTJ, and they're visionary problem solvers. They're connectors that see patterns, and they do a wonderful job of being able to brainstorm within themselves. Now, this is inside their minds. They will brainstorm inside themselves, creating something and being able to see all of the different options, different solutions. But when they hit that exaggerated state, they become visionary, almost a wild vision, very unrealistic and very arrogant about their solutions, that only they know what's best. They also will become very complex, and they will force data to fit into their patterns in the way that they want. And they also become inwardly driven. They will be more of a can't ask for help, or more like they won't ask for help. It often reminds me of the phrase my mother used to tell me. It was, if it's to be, it's up to me. And that's exactly how they're going to become in their exaggerated state. If it's to be, it's up to me. When we look at our dominant extroverted intuition people, these are people with a global oriented view. They're innovative, they're enthusiastic, and they're very fast paced. So it's very difficult at times for an introverted person to keep up with these dominant extrovert intuition. Their possibilities are endless and they're very flexible. But in their exaggerated state, they become convinced that there are many relationships with a variety of things and links that may not ever exist. And they'll get to the point that they love change just because of the novelty of it. They want change all the time, and they become very out of control, over the top. They're swamped with their options, which makes them indecisive. And suddenly they're going to want to jump in and experience any kind of irrational change, no matter what. As we look at this dominant introverted thinking of the ISTP and the INTP, at their best, they're really persistently searching for something that's true and correct. They love the analysis, and they love to be able to really dive in and to concentrate in depth, which goes along with their introverted side because it's a very independent activity. They're logical, objective, and they're very self-motivated, goal-oriented. Now, in their exaggerated state, though, they become very obsessed that there's a truth, and there's a truth about everything, and there's a black and a white. There's no gray. It's all black, all white, all truth. There's only one decision. And they're going to get lost in their concentration. They'll get so lost in their concentration that they're going to actually forget things in life. For instance, they may forget to eat. They're going to forget even the basics of life. They will accept only their logic, nobody else's, and they become totally detached. They're almost like a machine, completely out of control. The extroverted thinking, however, is very cool and calm and rational. They're able to really present their goals with clarity that goes along with being extroverted, that they like to present and to share. They're logical and they're analytical. In that exaggerated state, however, they get very detached, very cold, and everything has to be rational. And they oversimplify everything just because it has to be clear. They're going to interrupt and critique anybody and everybody, even if they have logic there, because they're going to see somebody else's thoughts as a lack of logic. The dominant introverted feeling, the ISFP and the INFP, are very empathetic people. They're feeling oriented. Remember that these are people who love harmony, and they want to make sure that they realize that people matter. People matter to them. People matter to organizations. People matter to the world. The world is about people. They're also independent, sensitive, and idealistic. Now, in their exaggerated state, though, they become rescuers, and they're going to rescue anyone and everyone. But they also become very much in tune with the idea that they have to carry the weight of the entire world, that it's all up to them. They're going to isolate themselves. They become hypersensitive, even pompous at times. When we look at the dominant extroverted feeling, that's the ESFJ and the ENFJ, we can see that they have some wonderful attributes when they're working at their best. They're encouraging, they're interested in others, they're harmonious, which is part of that feeling. Remember, harmonious. They look outward at other people and other things and looking for ideals and values. Very, very people-oriented and relationship-oriented. But when they get into that state where they're exaggerated and they feel completely out of control, they're really insistent that they know what's best for others. They are intrusive and prying, and they're really going to ignore many of the problems that are there because they need that harmony so badly. And by denying those problems, they've created a superficial harmony in their mind. And that's how they're dealing with the stress, is they've created harmony, so therefore it exists. And at times they're going to lack focus, they become scatterbrained, and they may even become overly identifying with others, meaning that they become overburdened. So let's look at what we can do to really deal with stress. And most importantly, we need to realize and recognize that our own type has an exaggeration, that we're not exempt to this, that our type is going to have ways that really express our stress. And so at times we need to step back and realize and take a quick view. Am I in an exaggerated state, or am I working at my best? Then once we realize that we've recognized and we've realized that we're slipping into that exaggerating state, we can use some coping with stress mechanisms. You can breathe deeply, you can take a walk, play a game, watch TV, journaling, talk to a colleague, take a time out, whatever it is that's going to work best for you. And also it's very important that you learn from these experiences. You want to take some time to ask yourself some questions. Can you identify with what is really causing you the greatest stress? So what is it that's really stressing you out? What's knocked you into that exaggerated state? And sometimes it's not very easy to figure that out, so you want to be able to really step back and figure and really ponder. Are there things that you can change about it? So really, what is inside of your realm of control? So if something that's stressing you out is the weather, you really don't have much that you can do about that. But there are things that you can do. Maybe you've taken on too many responsibilities, so you can get rid of some. So ponder and see what is really within your realm of control when you're looking at the stress. And can other people help you? Who is there that really can help you? So we can't really get rid of all the stress in our life, but we can really recognize our reactions and observe their effects that guide us towards modifying our lives and our situations to reduce this stress.